Welcome to the Berkeley Blockchain Xcelerator. This is a podcast and video series. We have Pinata on board today. So the co-founders, Kyle Tutt and Matt Ober. I want you guys to describe Pinata because you claim to be the first multimedia hub for non-fungible tokens, NFTs. And so that's a pretty big claim. I want you to substantiate it. But also I want to congratulate you because you're part of our cohort alumni group. You've acquired 40,000 plus users and you continue to grow. And so I think I just want to kick off by letting you two talk about yourselves. You can choose what order, and then I'll have some questions for you as well.
Yeah, for sure. So Pinata is basically the home for NFT media. And what that means is a lot of these NFT projects, marketplaces, apps use Pinata to manage their files, data, media, whatever it is that is actually attached to that NFT. So whether it's a simple JPEG or something much more substantial, a large significant portion of the NFT space uses us to do that. And the reason they do that is because of a protocol that we operate on called IPFS, or the InterPlanetary File System, that allows them to have some unique security properties with the files. And so we started off as an IPFS pinning service. That's where we started. We knew early on back in the day that you needed to store data somewhere for blockchains. And storing data on the blockchain itself was actually extremely expensive and not very practical. And so we always knew that eventually people would start needing a place to store data in large quantities, and the NFT space is the first great use case that we've had, and had significant success and growth with the growth of the NFT space. So as for me, I'm Kyle Tutt, co-founder and CEO based in Omaha, Nebraska, and been in the blockchain and crypto space since full-time since 2017.
Thanks, Kyle. Kyle did a pretty good job of explaining Pinata as a whole. Really just kind of the NFT space really found us to suit their needs for storing data in that really verifiable, kind of decentralized manner that blockchain applications really need. So we're happy that such a fun space found us there. Myself am Matt Ober. I am the CTO and other co-founder of Pinata, and also living in Omaha, Nebraska right now with Kyle. And been in the blockchain space for probably a few months after Kyle, but around the same time, I would say.
Yep.
Pretty cool. So my understanding is that you guys met as friends, and then you guys decided to journey together. And at this point, you walked this path for years. You're very dedicated. And so I want to bring it back beyond things that we want to plug and calls to action we want to issue. How did you guys become friends in the first place and discover that there's a common purpose you should onboard to?
Yeah, for sure. So back in 2017, I'd quit my job working at a startup and just said, it was April 2017. And I'm like, I'm going to go full time into blockchain and crypto. I didn't know what that meant or, where it would take me, but committed to it. And as you can imagine, in Omaha, Nebraska, especially in 2017, there weren't a lot of people that knew like what blockchain or crypto was. The 2017-18 ICO boom hadn't happened. So from a mainstream perspective, it was even significantly less than today. And so what I did is I started a blockchain meetup group, and Matt was one of the first people to reach out to me, and he was super interested in Ethereum and IPFS obviously at the time. And we just grabbed drinks one day, and I said, hey, let's go to a hackathon together. So we went to ETH Waterloo in 2017, which actually is where CryptoKitties launched. Or I guess it would have been 2018, maybe 2017. And CryptoKitties launched there, and that was the first actual example of NFTs that we saw. And yeah, we've been building Pinata and working in the space ever since.
Very cool. So I feel like many people in the audience are going to be crypto savvy, but many people are going to be just curious. And I'm sure we'll have future cohort members listen in thinking, what kind of people go through the Berkeley Accelerator? What kind of assumptions do they make? And how do they sort of grow after the program? And I'm curious with you two, in the years that you've been around in the space, many things changed. And so do you have some specific assumptions that you made, which you later found out, oh man, this is so wrong? Or surprising discoveries you later found out, wow, we need to make our entire journey right on this new thing?
Yeah, I guess what I would say is one of the hardest things I think that we did early on is we were right, but we were early. So not a lot of people understood what IPFS was and why you would use it. And so that was probably the biggest struggle that we had to go through is we needed something like NFTs to exist to make us, a startup that was actually successful. So Matt and I had to grind together, for 2 years where we had less than 1,000 users and not a lot of people actually using us. And we just had to hang in there basically because, we knew it made sense. We knew that the space would need it. It's just being early is almost like being wrong, or it can be. So being able to hang in there together was a huge benefit for us. Matt, you got anything?
Oh, yeah, you've been silent.
Kyle loves to talk. It's just, he's got such a nice voice. I don't want to, deprive the people of that. So, yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I guess, one of the things that we frequently got asked on our end when we were going through kind of the building stages of Pinata was whether we were going to have a token or not associated with Pinata. And that was something that we got a lot of pressure from a lot of different people that, hey, you guys should have a token, you should ICO. And Kyle and I often talked about it amongst ourselves. And, for some projects it does make sense, but we kind of decided early on that it really didn't make sense for us and what we were trying to do and, provide to the space. And, I think 3 years later, we're kind of happy we made that choice. It's allowed us to really kind of move the Pinata in the direction that we wanted to and make it very blockchain agnostic, so we can really kind of serve all the different players in the industry and make sure that, we're friends with everybody.
So I don't want to get too into the weeds because this is not a PhD oriented, like a PhD oriented session. Yep. But for the layman, what would you say IPFS is? Because if I'm hearing this as some middle schooler or high schooler, it sounds almost sci-fi like interplanetary. Wow.
Yeah. Basically at its core, IPFS is just a file system. Just like any other file system. Like it's like uploading a file to your desktop, except IPFS can run across clouds and across devices and anywhere. But the amazing thing about IPFS is its content addressability, or its content identifier. So with IPFS, all files are identified by the file itself instead of where it's stored. And this is a core fundamental change with how IPFS works versus something like a URL. So when you store, or you have a website and you go to kyletut.com/pink pinata, there could be a pink pinata behind that, or you could swap it out and there could be a blue pinata or a yellow pinata, but it still says pink pinata there at the URL. With CIDs, that wouldn't be true. So when you change the underlying file from a pink pinata to a blue pinata, it's going to say that it's a blue pinata, and you can verifiably prove that. And so what we've seen where this works in the NFT space is when you create an NFT and there's a file behind it, what was happening is people were swapping out what the actual underlying asset or file was for that NFT. There was a famous example of I guess not famous, but famous to us. We love talking about it. Is artist had created a NFT with artwork, sold the artwork, and then once it was sold, he actually swapped out the art behind the NFT and changed it to pictures of rugs, and he called it a rug pull. So what IPFS does is it basically secures the file in a way that you know if that file is what it's supposed to be. And then even if it does change, because there are actually instances where NFTs want the files to change and be updated and make it more interactive. With IPFS, you know that happens, and you have a verifiable way to prove that it took place. Hopefully that wasn't too technical.
No, like pink pinata, blue pinata,
easy.
Like that kind of level, yeah. That kind of level is the right level.
I have a YouTube video where it's the yellow pinata and the missing pinata. So we like using our logo for using as examples.
I see. Why pinata? By the way, both of you can answer this. Why pinata?
Oh, geez. Really, I mean, honestly, it's a good question, but I think the origin story is going to be a lot less exciting than what you're thinking. Kyle and I started working with IPFS, and we were putting together, kind of tools internally. We're like, okay, we'll make a business out of this so we can offer it to people. And in IPFS, there is this terminology. It's called pinning your data, which basically just means you're storing it on IPFS to serve to people. So we started thinking to ourselves, we're like, okay, pin board, pin wheel, all sorts of weird, just kind of
pinball
puns, and then all of this, exactly, pinball, and then all of a sudden, I forget who it was, but one of us just said pinata, and I think we kind of instantly knew. And then Kyle spent the next week with his cheap, like, free version of Photoshop coming up with
the logo,
the pinata logo, and then pinata was born.
Gotcha. Damn. I think that's actually a great story. Yeah, that's a great moment.
It was, and like, to be honest with you, like, it's a huge. It's funny how, like, that moment, like, I remember it so well. Like, Matt and I sitting in the office together, trying to come up with a name for this company. And one of the things we always wanted to do is what we saw at the time. The space was very dark visually. And not very fun. Everybody was taking it so serious. And so we wanted something that was going to be fun and light. And now internally we call it whimsical. But that the pinata just, was a perfect representation of that, and has really helped us out as we've grown.
Yeah, I would say I agree. The dark imagery, especially navy blue, black, off gray, like that kind of brand scheme, plus this random geometry. It's like my peeve in the industry. Yeah. There's a bunch of tessellations or a bunch of random hexagons or diamonds that are just linked together, and we're like, oh yeah, that looks chain-like. It looks block-like.
Exactly. And we always wanted to be careful that we didn't name ourselves off of specifically the technology. So because the technology underneath can change, or maybe we were using IPFS and it wasn't in blockchain. So we wanted to have a pretty flexible name, and are super happy with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So okay, not to be pessimistic, but NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are known far and wide at this point, mostly because it's so hypey. And there is this school of thought that NFTs are a giant bubble. They represent nothing real. They can be fraudulent, easily fraudulent.
Yep.
And ultimately, they're overinflated in terms of asset price, in terms of the attention that the assets get. But then on the other hand, we have NFTs as a serious technical consideration, NFTs as a medium to share value, NFTs as a way to express yourself, a way for expressing to also come with control whereby creators can benefit off their work and retain a level of ownership. And so all that being considered, it's not new to humanity, I don't think, the idea of having provenance for things that are valuable. It's not new to us, the idea of having forgeries for things that are exclusive. But at the same time, I haven't made my own decision actually on whether NFTs are real or not. I don't own any. I've been suggested to buy some.
Yeah, well,
friends
we can get you one if you need one.
They're like, I'll just send you one. And in my mind, I'm like, you're gonna send me a digital fake thing,
yeah,
for which I can claim some fake ownership and send it to someone else for money later. This is so weird.
Yep.
So yeah, can you just break down NFTs for maybe somebody like my mom, who's pestering me, being like, I want to get Bitcoin, and I'm like, Mom, no, don't do that. And then she's like, oh, I want to invest in startups. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, they have a very low success rate. Please don't. And she's like, maybe I should get an apartment. And I'm like, no, buy a real house. You're old. And now she's like, what is an NFT? I want to buy an NFT.
Yep.
And I don't know what to say, because maybe she should buy an NFT. Maybe my mom should own NFTs.
Yeah. So the way we always talk about NFTs is at its core, or I should probably say a non-fungible token, if we didn't define that. Basically, it just means that the token itself can't be divided up. Whereas with Ethereum or Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, you can divide up those tokens. Non-fungible tokens, they can't be divided. The way we look at them is they represent ownership or licensing rights to anything. That can be something as simple as an image, where it represents owning that image or having licensing rights or some form of intellectual property rights to that image. And then what it enables, it allows you to transfer it between people very easily. So an NFT can transfer from your wallet or account, however you want to look at it, to somebody else's. They can pay you for it. You can layer in smart contracts and all sorts of stuff like that. But at its most simple, it's just the representation of ownership and licensing rights of something. Now, where the space has gone off the rails a little bit is definitely in how much they're selling for, and I think long term that'll kind of settle out a little bit. And I think there's a little bit of confusion in the space about what you're actually paying for. So when you're buying an NFT, NFTs again can represent anything. We've seen people build applications that are NFTs. We've seen people have videos, data sets, all sorts of things can be NFTs, and actually physical objects as well can be represented by an NFT. But there are projects out there, NFT projects, where you actually get derivative rights to create assets off of owning an NFT. So like with Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is a very popular one, you can buy an NFT, a Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT, and then it allows you to actually create derivative works. So you can create a 3D version of your Bored Ape, or you can start, there's somebody, Jenkins the valet is writing a book about his Bored Ape. They're creating movies and things like that. So it's actually allowing you to buy into a business, essentially, is kind of how you can look at it. But then there's other ones out there, NFTs, that you don't get any of those derivative intellectual property rights. You literally just get the NFT and you have the right to display it, right? And in that sense, it's much closer to being like a book, where you buy a Harry Potter book. You don't get the right to create more Harry Potter stories. You just get to read the book, right? So what I think the space is figuring out is that there are different types of NFTs. Some of them are just kind of consumables, similar to consuming a video or something on Netflix. That's one type of NFT. And then there's ones that can be used, to create businesses and generate value and revenue off of, which would be like the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs out there. So again, because they can represent anything, they can represent assets, they can represent consumables, and they can represent anything in between. The one final thing I would say is that NFT itself doesn't have any value. It's just a token sitting on a blockchain. That's all it is. And it's very similar to having a domain name, right? So there's nothing inherently valuable about Amazon.com. But Amazon.com in 1994 built a business behind that domain name, right? That generates revenue and has become the company that it is today. So NFTs are very similar to URLs or domain names, if you want to think of it that way. There has to be something behind that NFT that is actually valuable and might go up in price or down in price, or something that will generate revenue. And I think that's one of those things in the mainstream. It's just JPEG selling for $1 million. Behind the scenes, there's actually a lot of complexity. And then obviously the technology underneath is actually getting very, very sophisticated. 6 months ago, it was just JPEGs. Now there's complicated applications and data sets and all sorts of things that are being attached to NFTs.
Yeah. One thing I'll add there too. So Kyle touched a lot kind of on, really brought up this idea of NFTs can be anything. And something, not a lot of people will think about here is, Luke, you probably own what I would consider kind of like Web 2 NFTs without even realizing it. So if you've ever bought like a concert ticket online and, you whip out your phone when you enter the concert, right? Or you own an asset in a video game, right? You own digital assets in the modern world, and not a lot of people think about it that way, but that's effectively what you are taking ownership of. And what the NFT space right now and the next iteration of where we're seeing it moving is that we're basically taking these things that people are used to, but we're giving them more ownership and more transferability to the assets that they already own, as these next generations of games and ticketing systems and all these other use cases of digital assets are starting to evolve. We're hoping that many of them will be built on top of these fundamental principles that NFTs are allowing.
Gotcha. So I like to think in extremes. Sometimes I think extremes are the best way to think about things. And I wonder if there's a world in which the international system of patents, of IP, intellectual property, is run through NFTs. And I wonder if in that kind of a world, Pinata would be the choke point that all must pass through. Pinata would be the standard setter that all must comply with in order to have any sort of claim, to these licensing rights or assets or what have you. Is that the direction you're going? And is that, yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess the way we look at it is one of the things that we found early in the space is that these NFTs were not actually declaring licensing rights or any kind of rights associated with the NFT. And so one of the things that you can actually do with Pinata when you're generating or creating an NFT is you can embed the legal rights associated with that NFT into it. And so that information can be stored on Pinata and then attached to the NFTs themselves. So, we do think that a lot of the legal rights and the intellectual property and all that kind of stuff is actually going to, rely on us to make sure that it moves with the NFTs themselves.
Yeah, it's I think it's kind of crazy where you guys are, because you came into a new industry, at which point you did some pioneering things and you imagined outside the box, so that I would agree you were a bit ahead of your time, but you kind of stuck it out, and then you more or less backed into the world of NFTs. I don't see you two as sort of hype men who decided to jump onto NFTs when they became cool and to try to create these worthless JPEGs and build brands around basically coolness and exclusiveness. You pretty much treat NFTs as the future, and you want to create the back of the back of the back layer of how to secure and verify these things so that people can go around feeling safe about their information and their assets and their licensing rights and their IP and everything else. So I think that's a lot of integrity right there. But it doesn't mean that you don't have temptations. You're human beings too. So what are some of the strategies that you were tempted to follow, maybe some of the quick wins you were tempted to go after, things that people in your position might do if they were bad actors, and perhaps why you don't do those things, why you dissuade others from doing those things too.
Yeah. So one of the things in the space is kind of this idea is you could really close down the data behind an NFT. And one of the things we always talk about is ensuring that the people that use Pinata have the ability to take their ball and go home. You should always have the ability to basically exit from Pinata, because to go or to follow NFTs and to be in an open ecosystem that blockchains are and IPFS is, you do need the ability to take your ball and go home if you want to. That is a very important concept. And it's actually, when you kind of dig deep into what people are looking for when they say decentralization, a lot of it's around, having autonomy and being able to not be locked into certain ecosystems and things like that. So that's one of them that comes to my head. On the NFT side, the crazy markets, we don't actually handle the tokens themselves, so we never got into any of those shenanigans. But Matt, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I think a lot of this also comes down to just when given an opportunity, evaluating what's the right thing to do morally, not just legally speaking. I think we've seen a lot in this space so far where there's been a lot of incidents where we've seen a lack of regulation present itself, and certain incidents have happened where, somebody did something that in a traditional market would be considered illegal, but since there's kind of a lack of regulation here right now, people think it's okay. And I'm not saying that's going to be okay long term, but in the meantime, right, it's really just making sure that we as a company instill the values of, does it seem like it's sketchy? Does it seem like it's the wrong thing to do? Probably should be avoiding that, because in the long term, that's going to bite you.
Yeah, I agree. It's really hard to keep one's integrity, though, in a market full of pay-to-play marketing, in a place where pretty much every bit of PR is what I call Franken PR, where you can straight up get published to these amazing channels and outlets where consumers might feel, you're a thought leader. Yep. But really 2 or 3 separate writers have put together all those sentences backed by an agency that you paid to have these backdoor relationships go forward for you. Influencers that people trust, really they're able to invest in these private and pre-sale rounds to personally benefit quickly off of token pumps. And they're basically shilling to the degree that the tokens do well for them. This YouTube ecosystem where a lot of low value productions are putting out content to a whole ton of retail investors worldwide who maybe don't even make that much money, considering the global disparity Yep. of what a monthly income looks like. And so we're seeing situations where meme coins are getting investment to a degree equivalent to some people's monthly income, yearly income around the world. And there are rug pulls, and some get lucky. And when they get lucky, they feel like, I'm a genius. I'm a good trader, even though maybe that's not true. So I'm not trying to talk bad about our industry, but it is what it is. Yeah. And it's very much driven by hype. How do you keep integrity in that situation?
Yeah. So we actually, one of the strongest things we have amazing technology behind Pinata, but I think one of the best things we have is the brand of Pinata. And we have basically ambassadors out there who are always talking about Pinata and, how well of a job we do. And I know Matt and I never want to, jeopardize that feeling that we get when people are talking positively about us and talking about us without, being paid. We had a example yesterday of somebody made in the metaverse, if people are familiar with that term, somebody in crypto voxels which is just like a game, a building game similar to Minecraft or Roblox or whatever, created a room or a space, it's called, where they're racing 3D cars down a drag strip. And they actually put our logo in it as like one of the advertising things on the wall. And they just did that, right? They took our brand and decided
So
that,
nice.
yeah, and we didn't have to pay them or anything. So I think it's very important, the community and the ecosystem that we've built with Pinata, and did it organically and naturally. Part of it was like Matt and I just call people every day. We have conversations with users or potential users, developers, teams, startups, whatever, and we're just out there talking to them every single day. So we've spent a lot of time trying to develop a community that values our authenticity, I guess, because we are one thing that is weird is obviously we're based in Omaha, Nebraska, and that doesn't immediately conjure up like Web3 crypto space, but in the Midwest, everybody kind of knows everybody. It's a relatively small place, so you have to have a lot of integrity when building your company.
Yeah. One other thing I want to touch on, Kyle talked about, making those calls to those people around the space early on. And you mentioned a lot of opportunities where people were looking for what I'll call kind of get rich quick schemes. And I think that's something we've really tried to differentiate ourselves on. There is, in the way we've grown our community, it's been, we never really started off doing paid for blogging or anything like that. We put out technical blogs. So what are the problems that we think people are going to be running into? What are the problems that we're running into? How do we help people solve those problems? And you'll see right now, our blog is got quite a few articles right now, and we've brought on some really talented staff that are just phenomenal writers. And I liken it to kind of investing in your 401k. The more you put in early on, the greater dividends you're going to have later on. And I think that's kind of been our strategy, is how we've grown the company, is rather than chasing the get rich quick things, we've kind of tried to build the strong foundation that'll last us through the hype cycles as they come and go.
So, okay. It's clear that you're looking to the future. It's clear that you've walked the path of integrity. I feel like if more people did things as you do, then maybe our industry would become better. Better not only technically, but also ethically. But I think it's really important for people to hear from the source. And there might be other Kyles and other Matts right now hanging out at hackathons, the Kyle 2s and the Matt 2s, hanging out, talking about the next thing, and they want to make a company. So we're going to do some rapid fire transferable lessons.
Okay.
I'll ask you questions that maybe they want to ask, but since I have you online, I can do so. All right. Number one, how do you actually find a good team and keep that team from falling apart?
You're talking about like a hackathon or like a company team, just to clarify?
Generally.
Yeah.
Oh, generally. Oh, okay.
So what we found, so one of our first employees was actually one of our first users, and people have to be interested in the same stuff that you're interested in. They have to get excited about what they're working on, and with the NFT space being exciting, obviously, we have a lot of people that have joined the team that are excited to be in the NFT space, but they also have to believe in kind of your values. And one of the ones I hinted at earlier was whimsical. We're building a place in a time that doesn't exist yet, and we have to constantly be thinking of what is that next thing that people are going to need in this space, and how do we do that? And they have to be curious and again excited to work with you. So have a common interest is really what it comes down to, because if they're in it just for the money, or they're in it just because it's a new exciting space, they're going to get burnt out pretty early. And ultimately, when the NFT hype maybe goes, it kind of pops and the bubble bursts a little bit, you need people that are going to be there continually when maybe times are a little bit harder.
I think my tip would be looking for people that are smarter than yourself. Nobody can be an expert in everything, and it constantly amazes me how smart some of our employees are at
I think Matt and I are
do.
definitely the dumbest people at Pinata now.
And I like that. I truly believe that, and I agree with Kyle there. And I that's the way I want it to be. I'll give a shout out here to Justin, and his writing ability has shown itself over our blog over the years. He's done a phenomenal job there, and some of the engineers we've brought on staff, and just every single person we hire seems to be so good at what they're doing in their own respective talents. And nobody's ever going to be perfect at everything. So find those people that are way smarter than you at what they do and give them a job.
Yeah, and as you bring together people, there's a level of merit, there's a level of connection that you have to have. I think I've seen more bad hires made than good hires, at least in my professional career. It seems like you make good hires. So just simply put, what is your hiring process and your search process? What would you suggest that others in your shoes do?
Yeah, so what we do is basically a lot of times we go out and kind of identify and find people that we think are going to be a good fit. So we don't have a lot of people that are coming to us, through like job boards or things like that. Right now, we actually go out and identify extremely talented people and then reach out to them and try to bring them on board. And then they go through a series of interviews, depending on, if they're more on the business side or on the engineering side. They get interviewed by multiple people. So at the end of the day, it's not just Matt or I making the hiring decision. It's a team driven effort. And it's specifically the people that they would be working with. We make sure that they get to interview them. And then ultimately we figure out if they're a good fit or not. Most of the time, they obviously have the skill set and things like that. It's just, does the team in general vibe with them essentially? And then we hire them. We, on the engineering side, they go through tests and things like that, but still it's more about how well they vibe with the Pinata culture and, if they're excited too. So we're always looking for people that again are excited or look at the space in a new and interesting way and are going to bring their own voice to their company. So it's not super structured yet, but it's definitely a lot of interviews with 3 or 4 or 5 people from the team going through and giving their opinions.
I think that's great. I can imagine the heart pounding in some kid right now about to graduate from some college somewhere, being like, I really want to work with Pinata. And you're just telling them there's no job board. Our positions are not public. You must interview with not only the co-founders, but everybody else.
Yeah.
We have a consensus-based building mechanism. And there may be tests, but mostly it's about vibes. I mean, I think it's more exclusive, more comprehensive than some well-structured methodical process. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's if there's any Berkeley kids that don't be afraid of us. We don't bite or anything like that. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, next question. So we talked about you guys, how to build team. We talked about hires, how to build team. Well, in my experience, often you need that exponential multiplier power of people who are well networked, well known, knowledgeable, people who are mentors or advisors. And I wonder how people end up finding these supporters and continuing to keep them motivated. So my question to you is, first off, I'm not saying name the 3 best. I'm just saying name 3 people that come to your mind right now, both of you, that have really helped you out along the path. People that might not even be officially involved, but people that really did help you. And share a little bit about how you actually got them to become your friends and your allies for real.
I guess I don't know if it's the first 3, but I will say that Matt and I's relationship is extremely important. So we have very different kind of perspectives and balance each other out. And that's been important, obviously, when, we were struggling in the early years. You learn a lot about each other, and it's difficult, but our perspective on things are always, it always ends up somewhere in the middle, and it's always a really good place. So I always look at Matt's perspective on stuff as being extremely valuable, and though maybe frustrating sometimes, has been huge for me, especially as a non-technical person in the blockchain space. Other people in the space, or just generally, this is going to sound so simple, but like my family always supported me in this journey, even maybe when it seemed a little crazy. And then generally speaking, I really like people in the space who might have a counter opinion to what's most talked about. And there's a woman that I actually, when I was in the accelerator, she did a talk at the Simons Institute, and they were talking about decentralization and whether that's actually a real concept or not. Her name is Angela Welch or something like that. She's a professor down in Texas, I believe, but she writes about concepts and things, and really digs deep into what some of these terms that people rely on are. And so I just always appreciate her because, and I've actually never even met her. I've only listened to her talk, and then I follow her on Twitter. But to me, she's like a friend or somebody that can.
Oh, we're gonna send this to her. We're gonna send this to her and tag her.
You should, because it's not easy being in a space where people's what people think and their ideas going against the mainstream kind of I'll call it rhetoric can be very difficult, and we've had to do that a lot at Pinata. Matt alluded to this early on with not having a token, and some of the things that we do seems to be against what the mainstream Twitter sphere is actually saying, and so you do have to kind of be willing and inspired to go against the mainstream. And she was one of the first people I saw in the space that was doing that. The other people is actually, again, alluding to all of these users and customers that we talk to on phone calls every day. There's a lot of really interesting and smart people out there building really interesting, smart things that, Matt and I or anybody at Pinata, like we could never dream of. And then, they're building it with us. So they inspire me quite a bit.
Wow. Okay.
Did I take
so many things that I just wish I could repeat and say ditto to. But yeah, I mean, a few of them I will. The first one I'll start off with is funny enough, one of my old the boss I had before I quit my job and joined Pinata. I came to him one day and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about taking a job elsewhere using my blockchain knowledge that I've gained." I just kind of wanted to let him know. And he had also known that I was talking with Kyle on potentially starting my own company. And his comment to me there was, "Don't take this other job. Go start your own business." He knew he was going to lose me either way, but that advice was something that I guess has kind of brought me to where I am today, and I was kind of very grateful for that. I am probably a little bit more of a risk-averse software engineer than I should be at times, and probably leads to a lot of frustration from the Kyle when he wants to do the next biggest and crazy thing. He can probably attest to that, but sometimes taking those risks I think is super valuable, which that lesson was huge. I I will lump Kyle on board with the next one that I'll say here is our employees at Pinata. So many of them have, I mean, granted, they're all very smart, intelligent, really amazing at what they do, but so many of them also have so many different experiences and kind of life wisdom that they have been able to pass on to me as I have grown in, my position here as CTO and co-founder. And it's, Kyle and I are both pretty young in our careers, and we have people of all age brackets coming into Pinata and taking those pieces of wisdom and applying them that, realizing you don't know everything and taking some helpful feedback, I think has been really, really influential. And then the last one I will throw in here, I'm going to have to agree with Kyle on this one. It's going to be the community as well. There's so many people out there building so many just crazy things. And I wish I could pick one specific person, but it seems like every day you have a new conversation with somebody that's just building something that you go into the conversation, you're like, this is insane. And you come out of it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the next big thing. And then you have your grounding moment of like a couple hours afterwards. You're like, okay, you're kind of piecing it all together. But you're learning something every day from this crazy community that just never sleeps. So I'll leave those as my three.
Okay. Wow. I feel like you guys have a lot of gratitude in your hearts for people that have.
You kind of have to. You kind of have to.
Very full, very well thought out answers.
I think a lot of it's like
well thought out. Luke, that was given completely on the fly.
I think that you got to look at like, again, in those early days, Matt and I, struggling to get people to understand like what the heck we're doing with Pinata. And then like, it's finally, working, right? The growth curve is like looking like how it's supposed to look when, it's taking off and people understand it. And so you kind of have to have a lot of gratitude because the early years were extremely hard. And I think now, even though like it's going in the right direction, I think it's actually getting harder. But those early years where you're kind of like, Matt and I have to think to ourselves, like, are we just completely wrong? Are we the morons? And so, it's you have to have a lot of gratitude, I think, to build a company and be in this space.
So, All right, let's do some calls to action. I love shameless plugs. I think it's the best when it's shameless. So, okay, one thing, if someone listening happens to be a major executive at the US PTO patent office, then they can decide to call you and just use Pinata. That's one.
Yeah.
If someone's a creator of any sort, maybe they can come to you and do NFT stuff. Maybe if someone's a Berkeley student, they can come to you and work a little bit in return for some NFTs. I don't know. Yep. I'm saying NFT too much. But what are the things that, people can do with or for you to sort of move forward in your journey and get involved?
Yeah. So on the kind of dev side, we love students picking us up and using us and implementing Pinata into their hacks. Pinata came out of a hackathon. So we love when kids end up, creating stuff with us. So going to pinata.cloud and creating an account and building a hack for NFTs or blockchain or whatever is a great first place to go. And then on the kind of more enterprise side, if you are thinking about, how do I manage and transfer assets of any kind between two parties? How should I do that? And you're thinking about NFTs, definitely reach out to us because we have a lot of, internal perspective and insights that we don't share externally with, publicly, I guess. But when we're having conversations, there are certain ways that NFTs should be created, and we have thoughts and ideas there that we would love to work with people that are trying to enter the space and apply it to something maybe not even related to what's happening right now. So definitely just reach out to us, and love to have a conversation. And even if it's just to meet somebody new and, nothing comes of it, it's always worth getting different perspectives and hearing different ideas.
Matt, got any other things to shout out? Call to action?
I would say the biggest piece of advice I would have is just build it. We started off going to hackathons, and I think that's so core to our identity as how we kind of grew as a company. You go to these places that have these just giant rooms full of nerds that are all just coding away, trying to build something that they think is cool. 90% of these projects don't amount to anything, but you keep going and you keep building and you keep thinking of new crazy things that you can do. And eventually one of these times you come out of it and you're like, this is a really good idea. And then you just kind of go for it and you see if other people find it useful, and you go talk to people and you put it out there for the world to see. And 3 years later, you're accidentally running a giant company with tens of thousands of users. Like, it's just build it. But two, if you feel like you had a good idea, stick with it and see what you can do with it.
And just build it on Pinata to make it a call to action.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. I love shameless plug.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this kind of brings us to the end of our first filming of the first episode of the Berkeley Blockchain Xcelerator video and podcast. So we'll see where this all goes. But I think it'll be really great to see you guys more often. And if you need any help from the Berkeley ecosystem, you know where to go. Conversely, for the audience members, if they want anything to do with you, then I'll make sure that we spread far and wide your names, your links, your everything.
Great.
Because this industry, I think it has a lot of energy and a lot of speed, but sometimes you can move too fast that you forget to go far, and you can take to heart noise instead of signal. So I really appreciate you guys showing up and providing that long range perspective, as well as the right signals for people who might be inspired about blockchain and crypto.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, it's great to see you again, Luke.